So this is how I became a millionaire. And before you get stressed out about the money up here, I do teach you how to make more money. So look at some of the other videos on the channel. The other thing to keep in mind here is that 8 out of 10 millionaires actually are first generation millionaires that were given $0 from anyone in their family or anywhere like that. Give you an idea of this. This is just the S&P 500 showing you what the return that year was. Then I go through the year. Basically any cash investments I was making into stocks or things like that, and then what my net worth was. If you notice, I had a negative $45,000 net worth. I was deep in debt when I was coming out of college. I had an income of about $10,000 that year. I actually got laid off of a job. I had 3 jobs in total. One laid me off. The other one stopped paying his stipend, was only able to cover tuition at that time. So I basically had to take out an additional $12,000 loan that brought it up to the minus $45,000 or $45,000 of debt. I was working odd jobs. I was dumpster diving. It wasn't uncommon to see my legs up at the edge of a dumpster. And I was scrapping metal. I finished my master's. I was basically living on friends' couches, paying them $50 a week just for a place to stay or potentially sleeping in my car. In 2010, I started investing in a 401k. So I only put away about $2,000 that year. I was focusing on paying off debt and just getting basically established because I had nothing at that point. So I got my income about $58,000 from a job. I was still scrapping metal. I made another $10,000 there. I was paying down my highest interest debt first and working my way through that as quick as possible. All the furniture I had was effectively secondhand. I actually went to a lot of the colleges, and when students were moving out and throwing out couches and tables and TVs and things like that, I was grabbing them before they were in the dumpster or when they were in the dumpster. I had 4% 401k. There was 0% company match until I was there for a year, so I didn't have pension or anything that point in time. And the week that I got hired, the company actually went through massive layoffs, closing sites and things like that. So it was a great time to start. 2011, there was a debt crisis, so it had a very bad return on the S&P 500. I invested a total of $8,000 into the 401k. I was paying off mostly debt at this point, so I had now minus $20,000 of net worth. My income was $66,000 from jobs and things like that. I paid down my highest interest debt. I was still investing 4% in a 401k. I was getting 11% company contributions, about 4% company match and pension and things like that, which made up most of the $8,000. In 2012, the S&P 500 had a 16% rate of return. I paid off all my school loans. I bought a car, about a $14,000 loan. I started investing 6% in the 401k, 11% I was getting from company contributions, and I put about $16,000 into a regular stock account because I was probably going to need it at some point and I didn't want to wait for a long period of time to withdraw it. I also didn't know at that time you could use a Roth IRA to actually pull money out and buy a first home with it. But, you know, when you're young, you're dumb. You don't always know all these rules. There's some learnings that I'll go through back here of what would I have done differently if I knew all the things I know today back when I was in my 20s. So I put that money away. The following year in 2013, there was a 32% rate of return on the S&P 500. I put another $18,000 away into stocks and things like that through 401ks and company contributions. So I sold off that $25,000 of stock that I had, bought a house for $130,000. This was under market value. It was approximately worth about $170,000. I did some repairs and things like that. So most of my net worth at this point was property, about $40,000 of this. So $40,000 here is equity and property, and then here and here is the other $10,000. So that's where it's about $50,000 at that point. One of the guys at work actually looked at me and he says, "We don't need 3 of you in this position," which was a good indication that I needed to find a different job. So I moved around in the company because I anticipated I was going to lose my job. So that was a great time as well. So I got used to that. I paid off my car loan at that point. I was investing 10% into the 401k, 11% company contributions. And I was also getting financial awards. Basically, I was solving difficult problems at work. So they would award you with, company stock and a couple $1,000s. You would just have to wait 3 years before you could actually cash it. In 2014, I had a 14% rate of return, invested another 18,000. My net worth was around 73,000. I paid down my mortgage. I continued 10% into the 401k, still got my 11% company contributions. I got another award for solving some other difficult problems. I just have to wait 3 years to cash that. 2015, there was a global sell-off. We only had a 1% rate of return on the S&P 500. I invested about $20,000 at this point, and at the beginning of the year, I had $104,000 of net worth. Here's where I paid down 20% off the mortgage for the loan to value. That's where I was able to remove the PMI. I basically, in writing, say, hey, get rid of my PMI on my mortgage so that they stop charging me that extra $100, $150 a month for PMI. And that basically can go to pay other bills or to go back into investments. I was now investing 12% in the 401k, 11% company contributions. I got yet another award for solving some difficult problems. Wait 3 years, cash that out. If you notice, I started at 4%, then I was at 6%, then 10%, then 12, 14, 16. Each time you would get an annual increase in pay, what I would do is if I got a 2 or 3% raise, I would take that increase and I would put the majority of it towards, say, my retirement account in a 401k or Roth IRAs. And I would effectively just max out any, tax advantage accounts because I know over the long term, that's going to benefit me better than having a taxable account if I'm buying and selling. Now, if I hold it for a long period of time and I don't sell, say I buy the S&P 500 and I hold that for a long period of time, then it doesn't matter as much, but you still have some capital gains tax on that. In 2016, there was a 12% rate of return. I invested another $23,000. Of course, this is not all of my money. This is also company contributions and things like that. My net worth was about $129,000. I got married. When you get married, my whole family is poor, so effectively I'm paying for it. So I paid about $25,000 for our wedding and rings and honeymoon and that sort of thing. I also started a commercial bakery, spent about $4,000 on that. I was working an additional about 50 hours a week on top of my 40 to 50 hour a week job. And then I was investing 14% in a 401k. I still got 11% company contributions. As soon as we got married, my wife stopped working. Our total household income, it was just me, it was about $90,000 at that point, just to give you an idea of what that looked like. In 2017, S&P 500 is 22% rate of return, $27,000 of additional cash I was investing. My net worth was about $220,000 at that point. I sold our house that I bought for about $130,000 for $190,000. I got a $90,000 check from the equity I had, and I started a commercial farm. Then I started using FSAs for medical type things, which also saved maybe like $500 or so a year for not taxing that. I was putting away 16% in a 401k, 11% company contributions. This is the first time we bought an actual new piece of furniture that wasn't secondhand, and that was a table. And we found out my wife was pregnant, so then the house I had wasn't in the best area, and we wanted to move. So it was funny because I bought that piece of furniture, and then we packed it away in storage for the next 5 years. So we didn't actually use that for 5 years. 2018, there was a trade war, fiscal tightening. So we lost 4% in the stock market. I invested another $33,000 here. Net worth was about $295,000. The income from all my jobs at this point was about $120,000. We rented an apartment. I had my commercial farm. We had our first daughter, and we had 16% I was investing in the 401k, 11% in company contributions. I then found out that I could also have an individual retirement account, and I did it with a Roth, and I was putting in about, I think it was $6,000 was the limit back then. I also got my professional engineering license while basically watching my daughter. So they wake up every 3 hours. They need to be, changed, fed, burped, put back to sleep, and then they would wake up and again in another 2 or 3 hours. So I'd take the night shift, watch my daughter, and then also study for the exam, and then pass the exam before I had to go back to work. In 2019, I got a 29% rate of return from the S&P 500. All investments into like stocks were about $44,000 a year. That includes the company contributions. Net worth was around $310,000. I was investing 16% in the 401k, 11% from the company contributions. At this point, being that I was married and we made below a certain income limit, I was able to start a Roth IRA not only for myself, but I also started one for my wife. Since my wife and I filed jointly for tax returns, you're able to actually have a spousal IRA. So at this point, I learned that, and now I was able to put $6,000 away into her individual retirement agreement or account, and another $6,000 in mine on top of everything I got from 401k and company contributions. I also had the farm. YouTube is when I got started here on a couple of different channels. I wasn't making any money. They were just kind of, let me try it out and let's see what happens. In 2020, everybody's well aware there was a virus. There's an 18% rate of return on that year. People got scared when the stock went down like 30% or so. People panicked. I bought some inverse ETFs, made a good amount of money there, but I didn't sell off my stocks. I just bought a few extra inverse ETFs to effectively benefit from the downturn. And then being that I didn't sell off my stocks and kept buying more stocks, when the stocks returned, I made more money. So in 2020, I invested about $45,000 in total. I had a net worth of about $430,000. Again, I was still investing 16% in the 401k, 11% company contributions, still going and maxing out my wife's Roth IRA and my own Roth IRA. $0 from the farm or YouTube at this point. In 2021, we had a 28% rate of return. We had $46,000 we were investing, and my net worth was about $550,000 at that point. 16% in 401k, 11% company contributions. We had 2 Roth IRAs maxed out. I had my farm, I had YouTube, started Amazon affiliates. So I was making about $10 a month on Amazon. Nothing huge. My mom and I would joke and we'd go, pennies. It's like, how much do you make today? 88 cents. And we were excited about it, but it was funny because it wasn't really much at all. In 2022, we had a minus 18% rate of return. This is when fiscal tightening started in the US. There was also the Russia-Ukraine conflict started in about February, March, which was a great time because that's exactly when I was going to buy my house. So I had to actually have a realized loss of about $30,000 on $200,000 that I had to sell off to buy the house. So at least for that year. Overall, it was up since I sold the prior house. But I invested $34,000 into the 401k, Roth IRAs, that sort of thing. And then my net worth was about $754,000. So like I said, I sold $200,000 in stock. I bought our house. I then had fixed it up. We had the 2 Roth IRAs I maxed out. I had a farm. I got some more awards, solving problems. I reduced investment to 4% in the 401k because I was paying almost twice as much per month for that home mortgage as I was the rent, and I needed to build up some cash reserves. Something's always going to break, something's going to happen. So I'd like to have 3 to 6 months of cash on hand, just in case there's a layoff or something happens or the roof goes bad or the heater or air conditioning goes and breaks. You want something. So I had to reduce the investment to make sure we had a bit of a safety net and emergency fund. Then we had 11% company contributions. So I always made sure that I never left company match of 4% on the table, because it's basically I get free money. If I don't put 4% in, I lose 4%. So I might as well, dollar for dollar, take whatever the company match would be. At this point, YouTube was making about $250 a month. Amazon was about $50 a month. Not huge, but it was nice. In 2023, there was a 24% rate of return. I added about $54,000 into our retirement accounts, and at this point, it was only about $770,000 of net worth. Basically, all the money I was putting in was just making up for the loss that year. And here, I got bonuses, raises, things like that. So once I had an emergency fund rebuilt, then I could start to increase the rate of contributions into the 401k. So that's why it went from 4 back up to 12%. And then I was still doing the 2 Roth IRAs for both myself and my wife. I had the commercial farm. YouTube was paying about $750 per month there, and Amazon about $75 per month. A lot of the money at that point, I was trying to pay my house off instead of a 30-year term. I have a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, but I'm trying to pay it off in 10 to 15 years. So I'm putting the extra money towards the principal in the home. And then anything above that, basically I'll make additional investments. In 2024, I had about a 23% rate of return, had about a $57,000 contribution into retirement accounts, and the net worth at the beginning of that year was about $950,000. About halfway through 2024, I did hit over $1 million of net worth. So at that point, I was making over $100,000 just in investment income alone, probably about $200,000 or so in all other income from businesses and work and things like that. Still investing 12% in a 401k, 11% company contributions. I had 2 Roth IRAs, one for me, one for my wife. We had the commercial farm. I have YouTube paying about $1,500 per month, Amazon paying anywhere from like $80 to $150 a month. So I'm just saying $100 a month. There's some other things that I had there, but those are the main ones. And then at the beginning of this year, 2025, I don't know what's going to happen throughout the year or how much we'll contribute, but the starting net worth is 1.1 million. And where I get that number from, net worth is effectively everything you own minus everything that you owe. So if your house is worth $500,000, but you owe $300,000 on it, effectively you have $200,000 of equity because you owe a $300,000 loan. So for the 401k, I have about $573,000. Real estate, we have, depends where you look, somewhere between $210,000 to $315,000. So I'm using that lower number. Stocks, I have an account with about $105,000. That's just a brokerage account. There's an individual retirement account. That's about $86,000. I have a pension of about $62,000, and then cash, CDs, bonds, things like that of about $70,000. So you take all of that, that's where I get that 1.1 million from. Things that I'm not including, we have a couple of old cars. They're total worth maybe like $10,000. The farm's somewhere in the $400,000 to $800,000 range, but in reality, that's the value of the crop. So I got another year or two, and then I'll harvest that. If you look at the YouTube channels I have, if you add them all up and you say it's a 10% rate of return, you would have a value of about $180,000. If you said 5%, it's about $360,000. So it's somewhere in there. And then just there's another $100,000 of miscellaneous things that I do that have some value to them. But I'm not including those in my net worth. Really should, but it's hard to evaluate. So it's 1.1 million now. I'm looking to grow that to probably about 20 million before the time I retire. What would I have done differently? Well, I probably would have stuck with the S&P 500 more than I did originally. There was a lot of times where when I was young, I didn't actually fully understand how the S&P 500 works. And I have some videos on why investors love the S&P 500. I would say take a look at that. Over 90% of actively traded funds fail to beat the S&P 500 over a 20-year period. And when I'm investing for the long term, not for a single year. I would like to have also known when I was in my teen years that I should own assets earlier. Basically, my dad would steer me towards baseball cards and collectibles and things like that, which are absolutely worthless today. I wish I would have spent all that money and just invested it into businesses. That brings me to my next point. Don't listen to broke people. Broke people will always tell you why you can't get ahead or why things are unfair or whatever. Don't listen to them. You want to listen to somebody that has actually done what you want to do, because they know what they're talking about. Broke people only know basically how to be broke. You don't want to get your advice on money from someone that's broke. Just like I don't want to ask somebody that's been divorced 3 times how to keep a long lasting happy marriage, or someone that's vastly out of shape how to stay in shape and how to have, exercise and diet and that sort of thing. So I want to ask people that do what I want to do, not people that do the opposite. Your wealth is going to be proportional to your financial literacy. If you're interested in learning about basically how to make more money, how to save money, taxes, laws, things like that, please subscribe. I go over a lot of that, as well as how to start new businesses and such. So again, learn taxes. Your skills will pay your bills. You learn before you earn, all those sayings, but they do work. Realize that the news sells fear. They're going to make everything basically sound scary so that you panic and want to turn on the TV, buy the newspaper, or whatever. Pretty much, if you follow the opposite of what the news has, you'll probably turn out better. And I'm a long-term buy and hold of the S&P 500. It's the top 500 U.S. companies, which are also brand names like Apple, Microsoft, Tesla, Nvidia. There's a lot of companies on there that you'll recognize. And if they are not profitable for a certain period of time, they'll get removed, and then other profitable companies will be put onto the list. So the takeaway from all this is consistent long-term investing. It's not impossible to build a large net worth. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take years, probably a decade or two to get there. If you're like, oh man, that's a lot of money to put away. If you look at this took 12 years. If you wanted to, you could do the same thing with less money. It just takes more time. The other thing that you could always look at is how can you learn more skills and how can you make more money. So this channel goes over that as well. If you're offered company match, please take it. It's basically free money. You're doubling, in many cases, the investment that you're making. My wife is really kicking herself because she wished she would have made contributions to her 401k when she was working, because she left all the company match on the table, and then she didn't have a retirement account until I started contributing to a spousal Roth IRA. The other big thing is don't let lifestyle creep get you. Basically, as you make more money, don't spend more money. Use that to invest, get rid of your debts, and then later in life, basically, this is not that long. 10 years is not a long time. You don't have any debt. You don't have to worry about things like that. If you get laid off, it's not a big deal. You can live for years without having to worry about income. You can retire early. You can take vacations with your family. It's a lot more fun, especially at this point in time. A thief of happiness is comparison. Don't try to compare your life to your neighbors or somebody else. You won't know what's going on financially in their house. They might be in massive amounts of debt, living paycheck to paycheck, behind on their bills, and they're fighting over it constantly because effectively they're going to lose their house, or they're going to lose their cars or something else, because they're so over leveraged, there's so much debt. If just one of them gets sick or loses a job, basically the house of cards falls down. I'd much rather have a good foundation financially. It doesn't solve all problems. Money solves money problems. My mom passed away a couple of years ago from cancer. Money can't solve that problem. But what money can do is, it can help solve some bills, or it can, make it easier to do things at that point in time so you can spend more time with your family members. But in that case, it's not going to stop somebody from passing away. If you want to learn more in terms of how do you make more money, how do you save, and how do you invest, this is a channel that covers all of those topics. Please subscribe and have a great day.